I was a kid, I performed a stand-up comedy set in front of my entire 5th grade class. At the time, I had no experience with public speaking, I was a massive introvert, and I had no experience with stand-up comedy. How exactly do you think that went? It actually went really good, like really good, surprisingly good. I had a great time, people were laughing at my unfunny jokes, and I actually enjoyed myself and was really confident on stage. And even though you probably thought that I was going to give some kind of self-deprecating story there, it actually went well because I was a kid and I didn't have this one specific block that I ended up developing and having for most of my life afterwards, and that you probably have too. And if you have this one block, it will completely destroy your public speaking, and people will be bored when you talk and won't actually want to listen to what it is that you have to say. But once I actually figured out what this block was and how to overcome it, it completely transformed my public speaking skills and made me actually enjoy public speaking and look forward to it. And I know that sounds crazy, but I actually enjoy it so much more now after overcoming this. And by the end of this video, I'm going to 1, explain what that block is, 2, explain why it happens to you, especially as an introvert, and 3, the steps that you can take to overcome it, especially so that you can make it so people actually enjoy your speech whenever it is that you're public speaking as an introvert. So let's talk about what happens if you don't actually understand this block. You see, have you ever given a speech and you can see that everyone in the audience is just, they don't actually care about what it is that you're saying. They're not engaged, and maybe you try and crack a joke or something like that, and the one time that you feel a little bit more confident and it doesn't really land, everyone's just kind of like, okay, you can tell that they're just there. Now, sometimes this does happen naturally just because, say, you're giving a school presentation and nobody wants to be there. It's 8 a.m., it's English class, and everyone's like, why am I here? So that's one example. But a lot of the time, it's actually within your control. But naturally, people will just end up being a little bit bored by your presentation. They won't be engaged, and you'll feel a lot worse, and it might end up creating a feedback loop where you see that people are not engaged in what it is that you're saying, so you end up acting in a way that makes them even less engaged, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and destroys your confidence every single time that you go up for a speech or any kind of public speaking occasion. Now, this is happening because you don't understand this one thing that I like to call your basic attack. So this is a metaphor from video games that I used to play when I was a kid. And a lot of the time in those games, you would have 3 types of attacks that your character can do. So you pick a character in the game and go play against other people or monsters or whatever it is that the game was. And you would have a basic attack and you'd have special attacks. So your basic attack was the default attack that you would just naturally do. So in some games, it will be the attack that your character does automatically without even having you press a button. In others, it would just be the most basic thing in the world. You literally just push down on the left click, and that's going to be your main attack. So say, for example, you're playing this guy who has laser guns. The basic attack for him is just shooting the laser guns. The special attack would be something like, say, doing a big blast or something like that from the guns. And of course, how does this actually relate to your speaking? The concept of a basic attack can be applied to your speaking in that you have specific things that you do and that you default to when you speak without actually thinking about it deliberately. So your basic attack, the normal thing like the laser guns in this example for you might be, say you're in a conversation, maybe it's the way that you articulate your words. Maybe you have a little bit more of a sing-songy kind of vibe whenever you talk, and you like to go up and down a lot, and you like to play around a lot when you speak with the people that you're talking to. Maybe you have a bit more of a blunt default attack. So naturally, your basic attack is just going to be getting to the point and being really fast. If you think about it, you have specific habits that you do, specific things that you would normally do in a conversation when you're talking one-on-one to someone. And maybe some people have picked up on it. Maybe some people go like, hey, you actually do this a lot when you talk. You should probably change that. But it's things that you don't think about naturally. They just come automatically to you. You see, the problem with this, with public speaking, is that your basic attack for your conversations is not exactly the same as it would be when you're public speaking. Reason being, public speaking is really weird. It's really unnatural. If you think about it, most people in your entire bloodline probably didn't have to talk to more than 10, 20 people at once if you really think about it. I mean, I'm saying like, say beyond the people who were, say, a few hundred years ago in your bloodline or whatever. So imagine some guy in like the caveman times. He would only really have to talk to the people in his group or in his tribe or whatever it was. So if you think about it, it's really weird not talking to someone or not talking to a small group of people or not talking to just a one-on-one person in a conversation. So when you're up there on stage and you have 100 people, 1,000 people, 2,000 people that you're speaking to, then it becomes a little bit more weird of a situation and your body doesn't exactly know how to react. So your basic attack in that situation might end up being a lot less confident, a lot less charismatic, a lot less interesting and engaging than you normally would have with your conversational basic attack. And that's why this is a problem, because without deliberately thinking about it, you end up becoming the kind of person who naturally falls back on habits that make them that makes you unengaging when you speak. And that is what we need to get rid of. So I want you to ask yourself, you've probably been thinking about this as I've been talking about this right now, but what exactly are your basic attacks? What are the things that you naturally do when you're on stage or when you're performing or when you're speaking to people in a big group setting? You see, think about the good things, but also think about the bad things. And this will take a lot of self-awareness, and there's some things that you might not pick up on and that you think that you do pretty well, but you actually probably don't. You see, a lot of the things that I think of when I used to be performing or speaking in a public setting for the first time would be that I would talk a lot faster because I just want to get it over with. Or I would use a lot of filler words, so I would naturally rely on filler words to fill up the silences because I was afraid of having any kind of silence on stage. Another thing is something that I see a lot. I didn't really used to do this that much, especially these days now I don't do it as much, but it's having a monotone voice. A lot of the time people don't have any kind of variation in their voice, which I will talk about in a second. That's one thing that's really important to fix. The last thing would be having closed body language. Maybe you kind of freeze up a little bit. You don't feel as comfortable or as confident, so you don't take up that much space and you try and hide yourself as much as you do, or as much as you can. Is this, or are any of these things that actually happen when you speak on stage or in a big group setting? Think about it. Be completely honest with yourself, because it's fine, but it takes actually deliberately noticing these things that happen, the natural tics that you have, the natural ups and downs that you have when you speak. You maybe end your sentences like this when you speak, stuff like that. Things that make you seem like you are not confident. That's what we need to get rid of. You see, when you change your basic attack, it changes the way that you deliver the words that you say. Because content in a speech is not anywhere near as important as delivery. So for example, to kind of illustrate how delivery actually helps your content when it is that you speak, say I had two sentences. So the delivery in this case, or the delivery example in this case, is going to be the tone of voice. So imagine I went up into a conversation and I said, "You need help." Or if I went up into another conversation and said, "You need help." One of them is friendly and warm. The other is mean and accusatory. That's a really simple explanation of how delivery affects your content. But when you deliver your content differently, that's how you can actually get people to engage and to really connect with it, what it is that you're trying to say. Even if you have times where you mess up, even if you have times where you trip over your words or you use ums and ahs, if your delivery is on point, people will be engaged when you speak. Now, a little bit later on in this video, we're going to be going over specific delivery tactics that you can employ into your speech today. But if you want a little bit more of a detailed explanation into this, into more specific tactics and more specific things that you can use to yourself, click the top link in the description. I'll personally help you with that. Now, outside of that, let's get into delivery details here. Think about it like this. Who are you speaking for when you're actually on stage? Are you speaking for yourself to feel good about yourself so you can go like, oh yeah, I feel good because I can speak really, really well? Or are you speaking for the audience? Because when you're giving a speech or you're giving a presentation, you already know the information. You've studied the information. You have it on your slides or whatever it is that you're talking about. It's the audience that you're trying to relate to. So that's what the focus should be on. So try and imagine yourself in the shoes of the audience that you're speaking to. This was the big shift for me that really, really made it so much easier for me to give a presentation. Because I thought of myself in the shoes of the people who I was speaking to. Because especially when I was in school, when you give a group presentation or a presentation by yourself, a lot of the time, you're not the only person that's presenting that day. So you would have a bunch of other people that are presenting and you get to go and watch their presentations. And especially in school, you're just there because you're supposed to be there. But you would have times where you'd be sitting there and you're really, really engaged and you're enjoying the conversation that they're having with you or the presentation that they're giving to you because they're just engaging and you're having fun. If you really think about it, the audience is not out there to get you. Have you ever been watching someone give a presentation and then thinking about every single minimal mistake that they're giving or that they're having when they're on stage? No. You're just there to, one, get the information, and then two, at least in most cases, to have a good time and to be entertained by the speaker. So the audience doesn't really want to see you fail. They're not out to get you. They just want to have a good time. So just give them a good time by giving them good delivery of the content. Because any time that I would be sitting and watching a presentation and the person isn't having very much fun, they're just there like, yeah, so this is what happens when you look up into the sky and you look at the stars and the constellations or whatever. It's not fun to listen to, and naturally you end up getting bored when you're listening to them. But if they're a lot more engaging in their delivery, and they're like, oh yeah, so this is exactly what happens when you look into the sky. And then, of course, that was a bit of an exaggerated example. You don't need to be super energetic. That's not my personality when I present. I'm not over the top when I do it. I'm just a lot more casual, laid back, but I do it in a way that makes it seem more conversational and makes it more fun. You see, so when you become aware of your basic attack when you speak, and the things that you do, the natural text that you have without having to think about it, the ums and ahs that you rely on, the closed body language, the monotone voice, all of these different things. Once you become aware of it, you can start to understand the changes that you need to make to your speech to actually build a basic attack that allows you to naturally fall back onto habits that make your speech more engaging and more fun to listen to. So when you have a better understanding of your basic attack and the things that you're doing without even thinking about it, because 90% of people are unaware of it. They just go like, okay, I need to be confident when I go on stage. And they just don't think about anything that they're naturally doing without thinking about it. So when you look at these specific habits that you have, your closed body language, your quiet voice, your ums and ahs and filler words, and all of these other things, and you'll become aware of them, you can understand that you don't need to focus as much on the content. You need to focus more on the delivery, on the basic attacks that are making your content more muddled. Because if you have great content but bad delivery, nobody will care. Please believe me, because I've been there. I've had times where I've written the greatest script and I would go up there and perform or present, and it was really, really boring and nobody cared. So how exactly do you change your basic attack then? The way that I learned this was actually through singing performances, because a lot of the time singing on stage and speaking on stage are pretty similar in terms of the skills that you need to learn. Of course, you don't need to use speaking skills when you're singing, but in terms of the overall mindset and beliefs and the things that you need to change to make yourself charismatic, it's pretty similar. So when I had joined a singing group when I had started college, I hadn't had that much experience singing in the past. I just had one experience where I sang in front of people and I think I sang the national anthem and I completely messed up and embarrassed myself and it went horribly. So the next time I went on stage and I had to do a solo, this was at my first concert that I had with a singing group. I did so bad. I remember I got on stage because I was so nervous and I was thinking about all of these things. I was thinking about the past and I was thinking especially of the actual words that I need to sing, the lyrics. I was like, please don't mess up. Please don't mess up the notes. Because I was so focused on those lyrics, I was so focused on the content of what I was singing, especially because I had that on top of that. And I was also thinking about the audience and what they're going to think about me. And I was so nervous and self-conscious because I was so self-conscious and I had all of these other things that I was focusing on besides the delivery. What ended up happening was I actually did pretty good on the content. I didn't mess up any notes. I didn't mess up any lyrics. But my delivery was so bad. I was there. And I remember I just did this weird, awkward little point at the crowd and it didn't really land. I wasn't singing very loudly with much enthusiasm. I had this very serious expression on my face and it didn't look like I was having fun. And when you're not having fun, the audience isn't having fun. So it was just kind of weird, especially because I was with other people who were more comfortable being on stage. So it was a bit of a shock because they were more comfortable. And then I would get up there and I was just like, when I was singing. It was really bad. And then after the concert, I remember I had an alumnus. He came up to me and he said, "You're a really soft-spoken guy, aren't you?" And those words stuck with me to this day. And ever since then, I was like, I need to fix this now. I need to make sure that this never happens again. So the next time I had a concert with that group, this time I decided to place less focus on the content and more focus on my basic attack, on how I delivered it. Because my basic attack in the last concert, because I was pretty much just AFK in my own mind, or I was just absent in my own mind, if you don't know what AFK means. And I naturally just fell back to the things that I knew. I was just kind of having a quieter voice, being a little bit more nervous, and just pointing at the crowd because I didn't know what in the world to do. So that was my basic attack at that time. This time I was like, okay, let's be deliberate about my basic attack, about the things that I'm naturally doing without thinking about it. So when I say I put less focus on my content, it doesn't mean that I ignored the content and that I just said a bunch of random things. No. What I did was I studied up on the content and I made sure that I had all of the lyrics down, all the melodies down, and every single individual detail about it down perfectly. So I spent a lot of time practicing this time for this performance and making sure that I knew the content that I was singing like the back of my head. I pointed at my head when I did that. You get the idea. And when I did that, what ended up happening was I was able to put more of my brain power on how I actually delivered what it was that I was saying. I was able to focus on my basic attack because I was deliberate about it. So this time, when I got up on stage, instead of just reverting to the things that I would normally do when I didn't know what I was doing and when I was too focused on what it was that I was saying, like being quiet, like shaking and being a little bit more nervous, like doing this weird, awkward point at the crowd, I was deliberate. I am an okay singer. I'm an okay rapper, I guess, a little bit. I'm not a good dancer. I don't know how to dance. But I was up there, I was smiling, I was having fun, I was even dancing a little bit, and I was just having a great time. And that's what ended up making the audience have a great time too. I saw a visual and audible reaction from the audience compared to the first time. And I was like, wow, this is insane because I was actually deliberate about the things that I was doing on stage and I changed my default. I changed my basic attack, my default state. And that's what allowed the audience to actually connect with me when I was performing. So that is how you change your basic attack. You place less focus on the content by studying up on the content so much that you know it like the back of your hand. And then from there, you can actually make changes to the basic things that you do without having to put too much strain on your overall thinking power and your brain. And of course, the default things that you do, they might be a little bit hard to notice. So if you're able to get a recording of yourself speaking or just get feedback from people around you so you know what those things are, then you can be a lot more deliberate about the things that you need to change afterwards. Now, what are some tips for delivery to make it so that you can actually be a little bit more deliberate in your basic attack when you're actually on stage and when you're actually giving that presentation and speaking to people? One of the best delivery tips that I've learned is to speak with authority. And how do you do that? How do you actually speak with authority? Well, a lot of the things that people do when they're just in their natural basic attack when they're on stage is, one, they speak quiet. No one hears what they're saying. And if you speak quiet, does it sound like people actually think that you care about what it is that you're saying? Not really. If I went up there and I was like, I care so much about this, I think this is super important, nobody's gonna care. No one's gonna think that you actually care. You don't care about what it is that you're saying, they won't care about what it is that you're saying. So if you speak a little bit louder, then that will help people to actually listen to what it is that you're saying because they can hear you. And then two, you sound like you have a lot more conviction behind the words that you're saying, and that will give you more authority. Another thing is to speak slower. Of course, you don't want to speak incredibly slow the whole time. You want to have a little bit of variation, which I'll get to in a second. But speaking slower will give you more time and it'll make you seem like you're more measured and deliberate about what it is that you're saying. Another thing is to end your sentences on a downward inflection. I see this problem so many times with people. Their basic attack is that they go up there and whenever they're giving a presentation, they finish every sentence like this. And then they end every single slide and every single note that it is that they're saying like this. And they never fix it. And when they do this, it makes it sound like they're really unsure about what they're saying. It's so frustrating to listen to because it's not something that you notice consciously. Most people won't notice it consciously. I live and breathe this stuff. So whenever I'm listening to a presentation, I hear someone do this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cringe so much because you're undermining your authority because it sounds like you're questioning every single thing that you're saying. Even if you're asking a rhetorical question, end it on a downward inflection like I just did there. That will help people to think that, oh wow, what this person is saying is authoritative. They're serious about what it is that they're saying. And what it is that they're saying is the absolute truth. See how much power or how much more power there is behind the words that I'm saying when I end my sentences like this compared to when I end it like this. You see what I mean? And of course, I'm exaggerating a bit there, but it is something that happens so much. So keep this in mind if this is something that you do. Now, those first three tips, those are the first three things that I would focus on if you're a little bit new to this. Now, once you've mastered having your basic attack be speaking louder, speaking slower, and speaking with a little bit more authority, once that's something that comes a little bit more natural to you, then you can start to focus on having a little bit more variation in your speech. And what do I mean by that? I just mean have fun with the way that you speak. Play around with your voice. Because another natural basic attack that a lot of people have is the fact that they'll just get up there and instead of speaking with a lot more personality and a lot more enthusiasm when they talk like they normally would in a conversation, when they get up there to speak on stage, it ends up being a situation where they just talk like this and they're just super neutral or super monotone when it is that they're speaking. Or what instead they do is maybe they actually do have a little bit of variation, but it's the exact same thing for every single sentence. So what I see a lot of the time is they'll start a sentence like this and then go down and then go down and then go down and then go back up and then finish with the upward inflection like they did last time. And then the next sentence. So then if you talk about this like this and 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 this, I'm not doing a very good explanation of this, but they just go like this, up, down, up, in the way that they have their voice sounding in every single sentence that they do. It's a little bit hard for me to do because I'm not someone that normally talks like this, but it's something that I've noticed a lot, where you have the exact same way of delivering your sentences every single time you do a sentence, which in my opinion is just as bad as having a monotone voice. So, what are some things that you can do to fix that? Have variation in the way that you speak. So what you should do instead of that is, for example, say you're giving a speech, you're giving a presentation, you can raise your voice a little bit. And then when you really want to make a point, you can quiet down and make the audience really focus in on what it is that you're saying. Or maybe you want to really make some other points. So you speed up really, really, really fast to talk about some other thing that you're saying. And then what it is that you want to have the audience really, really hone in on a specific word that you're saying, then you can slow down and they'll feel the impact of those words. So playing with one, the speed of your speech, so speeding up and then slowing down when it is that you really need to make a point. Or talking really, really loudly when you get excited and you really want to have something really hit and land. Or if you really want the audience to hone in on something that you're saying, you can talk a little bit quieter to really let something sink in. Of course, it's going to depend on the context and what fits your personality a little bit more. But just try one of these things, either speeding up and slowing down, or making your voice louder or quieter when you speak. And don't do the exact same thing every single sentence, but if you can do it in a way that makes it sound a lot more interesting and you actually care about what it is that you're saying and you have variation. This sentence is like this. Oh, this sentence, he ended it really, really slowly. Oh, this sentence, he ended it really, really fast and he was able to slow down another time and then he made it so much more engaging. What is this? That's going to completely rock the people that you're listening to, or the people that are listening to you speak. And from there, they'll really enjoy what it is that you're saying. Of course, I tried to emulate it a little bit there, but me talking really, really fast ends up making me end up messing up a lot more when I talk. And that's normal. It's okay. You can be more natural with it. And that's fine. Don't overthink it. Just have fun with the way that you speak. And as a result, the audience will have fun too. Now, if you made it this far, I'm sure there's something that you're thinking right now. And it's, well, Nick, I'm nervous and I don't know how to handle my nerves. But if I can't handle my nerves, then there's no point of changing my basic attack because I'm going to be nervous anyway. And what I would say to that is there's a few things that you can do to handle your nerves. So your nerves might just end up being your just overall basic attack because, well, you're used to being nervous when you get on stage. So normally you'll get on stage and you'll end up being nervous. So how exactly do you fix this part of your basic attack? And the first thing is, one, just doing it more. That's the easiest thing, or the hardest thing, I guess, technically. But it's the simplest answer. The more you do it, the better you'll get. The more I put in reps into my singing performances, the better that I got at not being so scared of them. So it's a lot of the time, if you're really nervous in public speaking, it's just because you haven't done it a lot. You see, you're not nervous in conversations because you've had a million one-to-one conversations before. So if you have a million public speaking occasions, which obviously you can't have a million in your life, but you get the idea, you'll be a lot less nervous. But that's not very helpful advice. What are some things that you can actually do? One of the things that I like to do is to focus on my breathing. A lot of the time people will tell me this, like, oh yeah, focus on your breathing. I'll go like, this doesn't help. It doesn't make any sense. But if you don't practice it enough, of course it's not going to help. Imagine if you told some guy who was, say he was overweight, go to the gym, and then he goes to the gym once and he comes back and he's like, I don't have a six pack. And you're like, well, you only went once. So of course you're not going to have that. If you practice breathing, taking deep breaths into your stomach, not shallow breaths into your chest and into your shoulders, and you do that, like breathing exercises especially, I'm not going to get into specific ones, but generally breathing deeply into your stomach multiple times before you go up on stage and making sure that you calm your body, then your voice and your mind will be calm when it goes, or when it comes to speaking. Another thing is a bit of a mental shift, but it was one of the things that I mentioned earlier. This was what helped me to actually be a lot more comfortable when I was on stage in public speaking, and especially when I was on stage giving singing performances. And one of those things was that the audience is not out to get you. They're just there to have a good time. So when you focus on the audience instead of being self-conscious of, oh, I look weird, or oh no, I forgot to brush my hair today, or oh no, like I probably sound super weird. My voice is a little raspy. I lost my voice the other day singing at whatever event it was. Instead of focusing on yourself so much, think about the audience and think about how they're just there to have a good time. So again, if you have a good time, so will they. So just, they're not out to get you, bro. Just enjoy yourself. Another thing that you can do that helped me with my nerves was to just devalue the whole thing anyway. And of course, this happened a lot the more that I did public speaking, the more that I did performances. But you just go like, meh, it's just another speech. Because if you think about it, again, from the audience perspective, think about the times that you were in the audience and you had someone and they went up and gave a presentation or a speech. Say you were in class and they were giving a speech or something, one of your classmates was. A lot of the time, did you actually remember the presentation? even 30 seconds to a few minutes after the presentation? Not that much. Most of the time, no. So if you give a presentation, most people are also focused on themselves too. So yeah, they might have a good time and have fun during your presentation, but most of the time, they're not going to remember the small mistake that you made on stage. They're not going to remember even the things that you're saying very much unless you're a really, really good speaker. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can use that to your advantage. You can go like, well, they don't actually care that much. They just want to be entertained or to be educated. So if I just give a good speech, or give an okay speech or mediocre speech, or even if I give a bad speech, it doesn't even matter. They'll forget it anyway. Because people move on, people have things to do. That was such a freeing realization for me, and I was like, whoa, why should I be nervous if they don't care anyway, or if they're not going to end up caring anyway? And the last thing that you can do to improve your delivery and to just improve your basic attack in general is practice, practice, practice. Again, the concept of basic attack is the fact that it's your default. It's a thing that you naturally revert to. So the more that you practice it, the more times that you go up and do it, the more natural it will become, especially when it comes to more of the foundational things that I talked about earlier, like speaking louder, like speaking slower, and speaking with overall authority. That should be your defaults. So if you're able to understand and become aware of those issues that you have, the more you practice, the more you'll be aware of it when you practice, and the more that you can actually review and get rid of them over time. So of course, practicing doesn't always have to be by doing more public speaking. You can also record videos of yourself, like I'm doing here, for example. You can also give a mini presentation to your friends. Say you're at a bar or something like that, and you give a little toast. Say you are with family, and you tell them a little bit of a story. Maybe it's 5 of them. Do it in situations where there's less pressure and where it's a safe space. And then naturally from there, you'll be able to apply that into those more high stakes speeches, like when you're in school, when you're at work. So once you apply these tips to your speaking, improving your overall basic attack, the natural things that you revert to, and becoming aware of those natural mistakes that you make unconsciously, then that's how you can actually transform your speech. Of course, in some situations, doing things like having more variation when you speak, or doing things like improving your ability to handle your nerves, those things will take time. But if at least you can make one small change to the thing that you naturally fall back on, maybe instead of when you get nervous, instead of speeding up when you get nervous, you slow down when you get nervous. And then that naturally ends up making you a little bit less nervous because you have more time. That's how you improve your public speaking skills. So if you want help with your technical speaking skills, with things like your confidence, with things like the way that you deliver the things that you're saying, the things like body language and inflection, all of those different things that when it comes to speaking, click the top link in the description and I will personally help you with that. But outside of that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, don't overthink it, because you're probably a lot better at speaking than you think that you are. Have a good one.